Today we're going to talk about the bookkeeping area. So there's a few different things that you can do in the bookkeeping section of ACPM. You can post both electronic remittances that come into your ACPM practice and also enter any manual insurance payments that you may need to enter into the system. Any electronic remittances that come into ACPM are going to be located under the pending EOBs pane. Now, I can't actually get electronic remittances in my training environment. I'm going to refer to the PowerPoint for today's session. But when they come in here, they'll come in by date, amount, and check number. And you can search for a specific ERA using these filters up at the top. And then underneath the filters, you'll notice that you'll see the ID number for the ERA. So it'll be the ERA number, the check date of the payment, the payer that it's coming from, the amount, check number, and then under the action, you'll have three options: download, report, and delete. When you first go live on Amazing Charts PM, you will have some ERAs that come into the system for prior dates of services before you started billing out of Amazing Charts PM. So that'd be from your old legacy system. So you're going to want to make sure that before you go ahead and download any of your ERAs, that you click on the report link and you look at the report prior to download. The report would allow you to confirm whether or not there are dates of services on that ERA that you will post in Amazing Charts PM, or if they are all from your previous legacy system. So when you click on that report link, it'll open up the ERA so that you can see all of the patients and the dates of services associated with the ERA. And this is just a dummy ERA that I have in front of me here. So you can see it's going to look like a typical paper EOB. So you'll want to run through the list and look at the different service dates to make sure that there are in fact service dates that need to be posted in Amazing Charts PM. If there are service dates to be posted in ACPM, you'll be able to go ahead and click on the download option on the pending EOB screen. When you click on the download link, what the system's going to do is that it's going to take the details of that ERA and it's then going to move it to the Manage Insurance EOB section of bookkeeping. And this is where you can decide whether or not you need to make edits prior to posting it in ACPM. Or if there is nothing that needs to be edited, you can go ahead and finalize it and the system will disperse all of the details of that ERA into each patient's account. Let's say all of the patients on it are from your old legacy system. Instead of downloading it, you'll click and print that report, and then you can post it manually in your other legacy system. And you can then go ahead under the action item and hit delete to delete that ERA from the pending EOB section, because you cannot post it in ACPM, and that's really the only other way to get it out of this area. Now you may ask, well, if I delete it in here, what happens if I misplace the copy of the ERA that I downloaded from Amazing Charts PM? Well, the good news is because all of the ERAs have to filter through the clearinghouse before they get into Amazing Charts PM, you will actually have the ability to log into the clearinghouse portal. And we went over the clearinghouse portal a little bit yesterday, and actually access your electronic remittances from there as well. So it's very possible that you will need to go in there even before you are installed with Amazing Charts PM to get your ERAs from your prior legacy system. Because once you get approved to start getting ERAs through our clearinghouse, they're no longer going to go through your other clearinghouse and your prior legacy system. I know some people will go on the payer site, get them there, but it is important for you to know that you can log into the clearinghouse portal, also get them there. So if you want to get them in the clearinghouse portal, once you log in with your credentials, up at the top here, you're going to hover over search and then select ERA file. When you select ERA file, it'll bring you to the ERA file search results screen, which I'm already on. You'll want to be aware of your check EFT date range. And the ERAs are going to come in by check date, file name, payer name, payee ID, check and EFT amount, check and EFT type. So it'll indicate whether it came in electronic, it's a non-check, or if it was a paper check. The amount of claims on the ERA, the check and EFT number, and you'll notice it's highlighted in blue, so it is a hyperlink. So if I want to print this ERA from here or save it, I can click on the link and the system will open it up for me. So I could go ahead and either print and save this. Also, if you click on the arrow over on the left, it'll expand and you'll be able to see a line item by line item, the patients that were on that ERA. And if you wanted to print an EOB specific for that patient, where it says ICN number, you can click on that link there and it will give you a ERA specific for that patient. And then, of course, if you're looking for a specific ERA in the system, you can use any of the filters along the top here for what you were looking for. So if you were looking at for a specific payer, you could put in the payer's name here, or by check EFT amount. So if I put in an amount in this field, it'll ask me no filter equal to. I'm going to click equal to. Now you'll notice it searched for that specific EFT or check number by the amount. And then I could click on it and open it. So this may be very important prior to you being installed with ACPM. You'll be able to get your old legacy payments from the clearinghouse portal. And then, of course, there may be instances where you need to get them from here after you are live. So I wanted to make sure I went over that with you today. And I do also cover this in the reference guide for today, how you can get into the system and access your ERAs from the portal. So now we're going to go back to Amazing Charts PM. And we're going to cover actually posting electronic remittance. So when it comes up to the Manage Insurance EOB section of Amazing Charts PM, you'll still be able to see that ID number that showed up in the ID column of the pending EOB screen. Still be able to see the date. You'll be able to see the carrier type it is linked to, the type of payment, check number. Usually there won't be a note for an electronic remittance, but there's a note column. The amount of the remit and the amount remaining. Usually if it's an electronic payment and everything is all set to be posted, the remaining will say 0. And the status will say complete. And then under the action up in the Manage Insurance EOB section, you'll have the option to edit, report, and commit. So if you get an ERA in ACPM that has maybe both systems payments on it, So you still have a few from your old legacy system, but the majority are from ACPM. What you can do is you can click on Edit under Action, Payment, and in the payment entry screen, you will subtract from the amount going to be posted in ACPM. So if this was a $50 payment and I know 25 of it was going to be posted in my other legacy system, I would change my payment amount to $25. I also recommend in the note field putting a note that remaining $25 posted in prior legacy system. And of course, you could say the name of the system. So that looking back, you know why it was edited. And then you can go ahead and hit save. Then when you return back to the Manage Insurance EOB screen, under Action, you're going to click on Edit again, and this time you're going to click on EOB. When you click on EOB, the system is going to launch you into a Processing EOB screen. So on the Processing EOB screen, it will give you the number of the EOB and the details of the payment. So it will have a claim ID number if it came in electronically, and then it will list all of the patients on the ERA. So this has only one patient, but I could have 5, 10, 15, 20, any number of patients on my ERA. Visit date and the visit number. The data service from and to will match the visit date. The insurance, and this is pulling from the insurance associated with the patient's account, and the amount to be applied to that patient's visit. So the next step is if you have patients on the ERA from both systems, you're going to locate all of the patients for your prior legacy system, and you're going to click on each line item. You'll notice that this line item's highlighted in purple, indicating that I am clicked on it. And you're going to come here to the bottom left, and you're going to hit delete. And usually in ACPM, if the information on the ERA does not match what currently exists in the system, the line item on the EOB screen will be highlighted in yellow. This is indicating that something about that data service or that line item on the ERA does not match what is in the ACPM database. So it'll be very obvious to you when you come in here which line items are from your prior legacy system, because it won't be able to reconcile with something in ACPM because that data service doesn't exist in ACPM. So you'll again be able to locate it, click on it, and hit delete on the bottom left. And then when you're done deleting the line items on the Processing EOB screen, we'll just say for this purpose, none of the dates of services that exist in ACPM need to be modified. So you can hit save on the bottom right to save your changes, and then X out on the top right corner of the screen to return to the Manage Insurance EOB screen. And then you'll be able to click on the action commit. When you click commit, it's going to ask you to confirm the transaction date. And then you can hit OK. And the status of that ERA will change to a status of committed. Now, it's very important to understand the statuses. Committed is indicating that you finalized that payment. So both electronic remittances and even insurance, manual insurance payments will need to be committed in the system. If you do not commit the ERA or the manual insurance payment, the details will not show up on any AR reports or end of day reports or the activity won't show in the individual patient's ledgers. So it is important that you are committing your ERAs and your manual insurance payments regularly. You'll notice once it changes to a status of committed, my action items change. So if I needed to go in and make changes to a ERA or a manual insurance payment after I've committed it, it'd be considered revising it. And you get the same options. And then you'll notice you still have that report action option that we saw down in the pending EOB screen. But the difference is when I click on report up here, I'll have 2 additional options to run reports for. So you'll notice in my drop down it says EOB detail and EOB summary. But if I had an electronic remittance in the system, I would have EOB detail, EOB summary, and ERA detail and ERA summary. So the ERA detail and summary is what the carrier sent back in the ERA file. The EOB detail and the EOB summary is the information that's on the processing EOB screen in ACPM. Now, you may say, well, isn't it the same information? It should be. The information on the ERA detail should match what's in our system. But from time to time, we do have clients that go in and modify the data on the EOB processing screen. So if down the road you need to research and find out, what may have gone wrong during the payment posting process, you can use those 2 report types for checks and balances to make sure the information matches. And then going back to what I was saying before about the yellow line items. There are other circumstances where you may see yellow line items on the processing EOB screen. Usually you will see yellow line items if the patient's data service doesn't exist in ACPM. So again, it's a payment from your prior legacy system. Or you could also see yellow line items if any of the charge details for that patient's data service were modified after the claim was submitted. So if someone went in and added additional CPT codes or removed a CPT code from the charge, changed the charge amount and or the payer associated with the charge, those line items will show up in yellow. And the system will not allow you to post or commit the ERA until those line items have been reconciled. So consider it a manual matching process. So you may be familiar with manually matching ERAs in your prior legacy system. Most people that have got ERAs in the past have probably needed to do a manual match from time to time. The way that you manually match a line item on an ERA in ACPM is that you locate the line item in yellow. So we're going to say for demonstration purposes, Shelley Smith is in yellow. You're going to click on Shelley Smith's line item and you're going to delete it. And I would recommend, if you have to delete line items, that you have a copy of the ERA in front of you so you know which one to put back in. Then once you delete it, you're going to search for Shelley Smith again. So you're going to go into the patient field and pull up Shelley. And then you're going to reassociate the visit for this payment. So in this drop-down will be a list of all of this patient's visit dates. You can leave the data service from and to blank. And then you're going to select the insurance associated with the payment and the amount to be applied. Once you've entered that information, you're going to hit save on the bottom right. The system is going to search Shelley Smith's chart. And if the information matches, it'll then show up under the adjudication details section of the processing EOB screen. Again, it'll list the date of service, location, provider, charge, that'll be the CPT code, and the amount billed for the CPT code. And you can see if the patient has multiple CPT codes, they'll have their own line item. And then what you will need to do is you will manually enter the information pertaining to the copy of the ERA detail report yourself. So you have to basically manually put it back in to match it up with the system. So I'll make this pretty straightforward. And again, you should always be entering the information according to the ERA details. And then as you put the information in and you tab through, the system will calculate the information for you. And if any adjustments need to be taken on a line item, you'll notice it automatically calculated the adjustment as I tabbed through the fields. That's something else you want to be very aware of when you do your insurance payment posting, whether you do it electronic ERAs or manual insurance payments. You want to always make sure the correct claim adjustment code and journal reason code is entered. The system will typically default it to claim adjustment number 45. In this drop down, you'll notice all of the other claim adjustment reason codes are located in this drop down. So you do have an option to override it. But if it's an electronic ERA, it would obviously default to the applicable reason code. But when you do a manual insurance payment, it defaults it to the first. And then the journal reason is pulling from a journal reason table in ACPM. And we load some standard journal reason types for you, but you can add and take away from this journal reason table if there's anything that you use that isn't listed or anything listed that you don't use. And I'll show you in just a moment where you can set up your journal reasons. Then it'll show you the amount to be adjusted. Depending on the journal reason code, there'll either be a minus or a plus. And then if there was a remaining balance, you would see it under the balance area. And then the system will always put the next payer in sequence based on what was set up on the patient's chart. So this patient's secondary insurance is Blue Cross. And again, you want to always be aware of the next payer. Then I could go ahead and hit save. And I do recommend when you are managing your ERAs on the processing EOB screen that you save in between each patient that you work with, so that if some reason something happens and your screen freezes or you have an internet issue, you at least don't lose everything up to the last thing that you did. And then if there was another patient on the ERA that had a yellow line item, you would just do the same thing with the next patient. You would locate them in the list, click on their name, delete, search for them again, and enter the information in again. And then when you're finally done entering all of them, you would X out of the screen return back to the Manage Insurance EOB screen, and of course, go ahead and hit the commit. So part of the handouts today is a section on common reasons why ERAs and EOBs, which are manual insurance payments, won't commit. And the first one is unknown charge. So that's the example that I gave you before, where someone went in and modified the details of the charge. It also may mean that you have to change the actual charge details so it does match. So there are some quick shortcuts on the processing EOB screen so that you can get into that patient's chart and either review something during the insurance payment process or modify something. So the first little shortcut is when you click on the patient's line item under the adjudication section of the EOB screen. If I come down here, you'll notice there's a link that says jump to chart. This will jump me into that patient's chart, and I can do whatever I need to do to research that patient. So it mean that I have to go into the ledger and look at transaction history to locate something, view if the patient has money in unapplied or balances. I could also access the patient's charge screen from here if I needed to go in and make changes to it. And then when I got out of the patient's chart, it would bring me right back to the processing EOB screen because I accessed the chart from there. The next option is under the adjudication details section. If I click anywhere on this section of the screen, you'll notice there's a jump to charge button. It changes depending on where I'm clicking. If I click on jump to charge, it'll bring me right to that individual data service. So again, I could make any modifications as necessary in order to reconcile that ERA. And then when I get out, I would be brought back into the processing EOB screen. And here's an example of a yellow line item. Another reason why you may have issues with posting insurance payments is that the insurance cannot find the insurance for the charge. So it would say can't find payer for charge. If that happens when you try to work an ERA, you get this message here. What it typically means is that the balance for that patient's data service is out to an insurance that has the wrong effective or expiration date set on it. So maybe, the data service was from 1/1/2016, and someone changed the effective date of that insurance to 1/2. So it's outside of the effective date. And the same thing with the expiration date. The expiration date and the data service are outside of one another. So you'd want to go into the patient's insurance setup in ACPM and make sure that the effective date and the expiration date are all set. And we always recommend that once a charge is linked to a date of service, that you never delete that insurance. I hit delete because I was saying it. But instead, you would just deactivate it by putting in an expiration date add the new insurance, even if it's the same payer, but maybe something changed about it. Maybe the plan. And I'm just putting this in here quickly. And then you would want to reorder the insurances so that the expired insurance is moved down, and there's a move down option. So that's typically what the can't get payer for charge means. And then carrier type mismatch. So that can happen sometimes when the carrier indicated on the ERA file does not match the carrier type associated with the plan in the plan table. So I give you instructions on how to modify that so that you can commit your ERA. And then there are a couple of other examples. I also discuss insurance takebacks. So if the insurance take back is pretty straightforward, there shouldn't be any reason why you can't post it electronically in ACPM. But as we all probably know, if you've dealt with insurance takebacks before, they can sometimes not be very pretty. So more often than not, they're going to come back and they'll have something in yellow, so you'll need to delete out the line item and put it back in manually. And then as far as manual insurance payments, it really works the same way. The only difference is instead of having all of the line items come back in on an electronic file, you are manually inputting all of that information in the system. And you can do that right from here by going under bookkeeping activities and clicking on payment entry. Once you click on payment entry, you can select the payment type. So in this case, we're going to just do insurance payment, the payment amount, payment date, carrier associated with it, check number. You can put in a note and then go ahead and hit save on the bottom right. And you'll notice when I hit save on the bottom right, the system automatically brings me to a processing EOB screen. And now I can work off of that paper EOB and just pull up each patient that's on that EOB. And select the visit associated with it, insurance, the amount to be applied, and then you go ahead and hit save on the bottom right, and it bring up the details. And again, you just put all the information in line item by line item manually. And then you would hit save when you were done with that individual patient's information. And then down on the bottom left here, there's an add. When you hit add, you'll notice it now jumps down to a new line item, and you'd be able to search for the next patient on the EOB. So you would do this until you've posted the entire EOB. And what's nice about this screen is because it has the payment details at the top, it has the current amount of the EOB, and as you post line item by line item, this remaining amount is going to decrease. And you know when you've completed posting the EOB because the remaining will be down to 0. And the status will remain in a status of incomplete until it reaches 0. When it reaches 0 and you get out of this screen, it will show in a status of complete and you'll be able to commit it. Now, if you're posting a large check or making edits to a large ERA and you don't get to finish it before the end of the day, before lunch, you can save where you left off, but what will happen is that ERA or manual insurance payment will remain in a status of incomplete until you go in and finish with what you started. So that's what incomplete means. It means that there's still line items to be posted, or there's line items that need attention because they may be in yellow. And then also with today's PowerPoint, I just put some common FAQs when it comes to payment posting, or should I say best practices. And a lot of you may already be aware of these, but I just put them in here anyways. So you want to make sure that you never post your insurance payments in the system, whether it be electronic or a manual insurance payment, until you've confirmed payment has actually been received. So you'll want to reconcile with your deposit slips from the bank and your EFT payments before posting them in the system. You want to make sure that you're always posting primary payments before secondary payments, because depending on how often you post, it is very possible that you could get both primary and secondaries under the pending EOB section. So you want to make sure that you're posting everything in the right order. Also, I say to get in the habit of checking a few patients on the EOB to make sure that they weren't already posted. Some payers, even though they send electronic remittances, they will continue to send paper EOBs as well. You also don't want to have multiple EOB processing screens open at the same time. So when I say that, I mean when you have an EOB open, you want to make sure that you don't open up that same EOB in two different sessions. Because by doing that, it confuses the system and it will give you one of two things. It'll either give you a saving error and say that, it's two people, or it's being saved by multiple users. Or what can happen is you can get what we call a check engine light on the top right corner of the screen. And that happens if one person is modifying to the same EOB in two separate screens, or two users. And if you get that check engine light, you can click on it and get more information. And if it says two people are modifying it, it may actually lock you out from that EOB, and the best thing to do is contact support. But if you don't do this, you won't have to worry about that EOB check engine light. And then I already mentioned this, but then always make sure that you do the correct claim adjustment codes, journal reason codes, and your transfers are correct. And I just want to show you quickly where you can manage your journal reason codes. That happens under Administration, Advanced Setup, Journal Reason Table. This is where you'll be able to see all of the journal reason tables that currently exist for your practice. And before you start posting payments, if there's any that you don't use, maybe you don't do capitations, you can click on it and hit delete. Or if you find that you need to add to the list, you can hit add and you can add your own journal reason codes. I also recommend to link your journal reason codes to your different claim adjustment codes. So that happens under Administration, Advanced Setup, Claim Adjustment Reason Table. This is where you can see all those electronic claim adjustment codes that come back on the ERA, or you'll even see these on the EOB, these codes. And you'll notice as I click on the different codes, over here on the far right is the journal reason box, where you can link the journal reason and then just hit save. Because by linking it on this screen, you won't have to manually link it on the processing EOB screen. Because you do need to have a journal reason code for every claim adjustment code. The journal reason code is actually what takes the adjustment. If I do not put in a journal reason code, it won't actually do the adjustment. So just something that you may want to do prior to start billing out of ACPM, or at least payment posting. And what you can also do is you can use some filters under the Manage Insurance EOB section to locate the different statuses of your ERAs and your manual insurance payments. So you can see in the drop-down, I have new and recently modified EOBs, incomplete, completed, revised, and committed. I usually recommend that you don't use the basic filters because obviously, after a while, you're going to have quite a few committed EOBs. So it would take a long time for the screen to load. Instead, I recommend using the Show Advanced Search over here on the right, and it will expand and allow you to put in some more specific filter options for your search. For example, you could either search by an individual ID. You can select one or more statuses. You can put in specific modification dates, or if you want to just leave it open, you can take out the default modification date. You can look them up by carrier or carriers, payment date range, payment amount, payment type. This is pulling from your payment type table, check number, payment note. You can even look it up by patient. So if I wanted to see all of the ERAs or a certain ERA for Arnold Allen, I would even have the ability to put in a specific visit number. And then when you hit search up at the top here, it would then bring up all of the different ERAs or manual insurance payments that match your filters. So this search is probably going to come in handy for you. And also a nice thing to show you is in the patient's chart, when you are looking in the ledger, if you need to know what ERA or EOB that patient's transaction was associated with, when I click on the ledger and hit search, if I change my view of my ledger to flat view, you'll notice you get an additional column at the end here, EOB. So this would tell you the EOB. What you can also do from the bookkeeping screen is enter in other types of payments for your practice. So maybe you do have capitation payments or bonus checks or incentive checks maybe that don't necessarily need to be associated with a charge or charges. If you do have those types of payments and you want to track them in ACPM, I recommend under Administration Advanced Setup, under the Payment Type table, you can add those payment types in here. So I'll go ahead and add a bonus check type. The payer source, so is it by responsible party or carrier? This is going to be by carrier. What's the payment method? This can be left blank or it can be specified. And the apply to charges field is where you indicate whether a charge would be necessary for this payment. So not for my bonus check, so I'm going to select no and save it. So now when I go in and add my payment, in the payment type drop down, I'll select bonus check, put in the amount, carrier it's from, payment date. I can put in check number note, hit save. And then what will happen is under this manage patient and practice payments, in the drop down, there is an option for practice payment. And if I choose my option to practice payment, I'd be able to see all of those miscellaneous practice payments here. The details, and I could even go in and edit the payment or void it. If you void any payments from the Manage Patient and Practice Payments section, they'll all fall under the voided by type. You also can view patients that have unapplied balances by bulk here, so you can generate a list. This also allows you to edit patient payments on this screen. So you wouldn't edit a patient payment from their actual chart. You would do it from here. So if you accidentally entered a payment for the wrong patient or the wrong amount, you'd come in here, edit the payment. Or you can void it. You can also apply it from here, and you can generate a receipt. So maybe if you forgot to print out the receipt, and then the patient is checking out and says, oh, can I actually get a receipt for my payment today? You can do that from here. If you choose to apply it, it'll bring you to the payment application screen. And we've seen this payment application screen before in the charge entry screen. And this would show you any patient balances that exist for the patient. Now, most people like to know if there are certain dates of services associated with that patient balances and what CPT codes they're attached to. So by default, it brings up the total balance. But over here on the far right, there's a little white drop-down arrow that allows you to change the view of the screen so that you can see the breakdown. And then you can decide where you want to allocate the copay. So maybe I want to put $5 here and $5 here. You can also specifically bring up a list of unapplied balances that also have outstanding balances. So you know exactly which patients have self-pay balances that you can apply the money to. You can also view and work on applies down in the AR section. Over here, though, it breaks out by responsible party, the account, the patient's name, and you could drill into their chart from here, their outstanding balance, what is it unapplied, the aging, and then under action, if there is money to be applied, you can either jump to the payment application screen by clicking on apply, or the system will actually apply the balance for you by bulk by clicking on rapid apply. And the system is going to automatically take the unapplied and post it to oldest date of service to newest first. And then you'll also see, which is nice here, that you have an option to bring up all payments for a specific patient. So if I put in a patient's chart number here and hit search, I can see all Arnold Allen's previous payments, his payment history. And you'll also notice that if you accidentally apply money where you shouldn't have been, if you pull up this payment history, there's even the option to unapply. And it'll show you what was previously applied. You could also hit the show application history and it'll show you the details of where it was applied. And if you need to make changes, maybe I want to change this to only $10. Once I hit save, you'll notice it's now going to put $10 back in unapplied. So that's how you can also correct errors, unapplied or applied errors, excuse me. And then manage closings. This is where you can do your end of day. So if everything's ready to be closed, you can go under bookkeeping, hit daily close, select the transaction date that you wish to close. You can put in a closing note that would show up on your closing report. I'll just put closing note. Hit save, and then the system will bring me back to bookkeeping, and under manage closings, I can see my new closing report. If I hit view, here's what the report looks like. Gives you your beginning AR before your closing, all of the transactions, and it's very descriptive about the transactions, your net change of AR, and your ending AR for that closing. And here is that note I put. It shows up on the left-hand side of every sheet in your closing report. You'll also notice you have the option to void a closing. So if you closed out a day and then you accidentally forgot to put something in, if you hit void, you will be forced to put in a closing void note. And you could put forgot to enter payment for Blue Cross Blue Shield. You can, be as specific as you want. And then it will void it. And then, of course, you probably don't want to do your closings before you run your reports. So that would be the next PowerPoint for today. I list some of the recommended reports on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis in ACPM. Of course, you're not held to run any report. It's up to you. But I would recommend going through the report list and getting a general idea of the different reports that we have in ACPM. For today's purpose, I'll point out some of the reports that I think are important. The first one being under the insurance claim report section of reporting, it's the unpaid claim reports. This should be run every time after you're done your insurance payment posting. And you'll notice all of the different reports in ACPM have filter options, and the filter options may differ a little bit by report. This one I can do by claim or service date. I can modify and customize my ranges, my AR ranges. And then for reports, you can either launch them automatically and or save them. So I'm going to do both. I hit yes and then save it. And then when a report is saved, it shows up under the Manage Report section of reports. It'll have the report name, the category, the date it was created, and time. And our reports do expire 3 months from the day they were ran. So if you want to save a report indefinitely, I'd create a folder on your desktop or in your network. And then you could always go into view and save it indefinitely. If you don't like a report that you saved, you can just delete it. And then let's just bring up that report. So if you launch it automatically, here's what this report looks like. And this can be used for follow-up because it gives you all of the information you would need to follow up on this claim. Patient information, charge information. It breaks it out by carrier or whatever you filtered it by. gives you charge paid adjustment information, and then the outstanding AR buckets. And you want to know, obviously, what the typical turnaround time is for your payers. So for certain payers, if you find them outside of that turnaround time, you want to follow up on that claim accordingly. And then you get grand totals at the end. Another report that's really nice is under the accounts receivable report, the aged AR detail or summary. This can be run for insurances, or you could also just indicate that you want to run it for patients. So this is a pretty basic report that it will give you the buckets and it will list it by payer. I think I chose none, but I should have actually said carrier, but you could also do plan too if you want. I'll just run this again. So here it is. If you run it by carrier, also gives you your self-pay and the different buckets and totals, and it even gives you percentages, which is really nice. And then your deposit slip report's nice because this could be used by the front end too for co-pays. You run this by transaction dates as well. And then you can specify the payment types that you want to include in it. If you want to run it for all payment types, just leave this field blank. And just to get a look at the deposit slip report, this will tell you by transaction date, payment method, it even breaks out by patient. If it has insurance payments on it, it will give you payer description, check number if necessary, the amount, and then it breaks out the different transaction types, the totals, and then a grand total on the last page. And then the daily collections report. This is kind of a report that gives you your charges, payments, and adjustments. So again, from a billing perspective, this is a nice report, and you can choose whether or not you want to include transaction detail. So I do recommend to take a look at all of the PowerPoints for today and get a general idea of the different report options. And another nice thing about our reports is it does tell you the filters that you've selected at the top of the report. So if you like the way a report ran, you'll know how to run it next time. And then in addition to the reports in ACPM, there's also some additional reports right in our clearinghouse, which is the other PowerPoint for today. So the other PowerPoint goes over how you can access and run those reports in the clearinghouse. So if I go into Claim Remedy and click on the report option at the top, it brings up a screen and lists in alphabetical order all of the report options in the clearinghouse. And if you click on any of these report options, it'll actually give you a little description of the report. And again, depending on the report, the filter options may differ a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and just change my options for a second. And then when you're done putting in your filters, you can hit Run Report. And then it'll display the report details for you. And there's additional filter and sort by options. It may also include some drop downs for you. So even After you see it on the payer level, if you want to see each individual patients, you can do that. And all the reports can be exported to Excel. So a lot of nice reports right in the Clearinghouse portal. One that I like specifically is the Claim Guard Expanded report. This report gives you just a general snapshot of your claim status in the portal. So by payer ID, payer name, the date, how many were uploaded for that payer in the portal, how many have scrubbing errors, not resolved, fixed, removed, were overridden, forwarded to the payer, have an acknowledgement received status from the payer, accepted by the payer, rejected, paid, denied, still outstanding, which means they're either haven't been archived or they don't show on an ERA. And anything that is highlighted in blue is a link that you can drill in further and get the specific claim detail information. And then you can even change how you want the information to show. So this is the Claim Guard Expanded report. But just keep in mind, the reports in the portal are only going to be based on electronic claims and electronic payments, because obviously paper claims and manual payments don't go through the portal. Well, that is today's session. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. If you have not already, please make sure before you leave that you get a copy of the handouts for today. And again, if you're going to be going live and you want to let your PMI know that you've completed the training, please fill out the attached training sign-off and send it to your practice management implementation specialist, because they will need that before your install. All right, fantastic. Well, thanks again. I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon and a great weekend. Thank you so much. Take care now.